This is the Outlap F1 podcast featuring America's own Cody, Andy, and Deanna. Your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. Join us on the Outlap. What is up, Outlap F1 Nation? This will be Season 6, Episode number 29. I realized on the last recording I was not counting properly. I think I missed a couple. It is 29. I've verified that. It's the 2024 Belgian GP Preview show. You've got Andy, and I'm along with Cody tonight, as per usual. Cody might be a little bit distracted because we have he has a new cat. So that's always a new thing. So, it's a little kitten. He's ridiculously cute. You may see him at some point on the broadcast if he happens to try to make his podcast debut. We were joking about it. But how's it going otherwise there, sir?
It's going well. My house is kind of in disarray at the moment, but it's for a good reason. So, yeah, it actually, feels nice to be in my little podcasting hub right now where it feels pretty normal. So yeah, doing all right.
All right. Very good. And we have hopefully what's going to be another epic F1 weekend upon us. These things come at us thick and fast. 5 out of 6 the last 6 weeks, and then a break. So we're going to get into all that in just a little bit. But if you have found our show, and a lot of you have, welcome along, as David Croft would say. You can find us on Twitter or X or whatever that is still called. Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and of course YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle for all of that. If you are on YouTube and you enjoy what you're seeing and you like what you're hearing, you can do as the kids do and smash that subscribe button, or you can give us a like. If you're on your favorite podcasting app, specifically Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you want to leave us a 5-star review and leave some nice words or some critiques for us, we will definitely read them and try to integrate your comments into what we do. We would appreciate the 5-star review simply because it helps us come up a little bit better in search results if you'd like to do that. Email the show. You can always do that. Chat now at outlapf1.com. We'll take you there. Thank you so much to the people who do continue to sponsor us with actual real money. It's really cool. Thank you so much to Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to become a member of that hashtag Outlap F1 Nation, all it takes is $1, $5, and I will read your name and every episode. And we'll be eternally grateful, even if you only give money for a little bit. So if you want to do that, we will always be eternally grateful. So thank you so much to those who want to do that. You can see it's our anchor page, $1, $5. All goes into buying equipment or upgrading equipment we currently have to try to make the show better, work a little bit smoother, and benefit you guys, the listeners, ultimately at the end of the day. Last thing before we hop into everything proper, you can always take advantage of our code OUTLAP. That's OUTLAP, one word, with the good folks at Manscaped. That will get you 20% off and free shipping if you use that when you check out with them. All right, so we will hop into, believe it or not, there's some actually really important news here that we got to talk about. For just we only finished our last podcast, what is it, less than 48 hours ago, and I didn't even de-rig anything. I just left it all up, as it turns out. So
this one feels like it kind of popped out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. But the big breaking story, it actually broke earlier this morning. I got a whole buzz notification on my phone from like 3 different sources. Mattia Binotto, he is back. The ex-Ferrari boss will make his return with Audi, and his arrival comes with both Kick Sauber CEO Andrea Seidel and Oliver Hoffman, who was previously its chairman of the board of the directors, leaving the project. So I've always said the thing with Andrea Seidel was we were never going to see him, and now we're not going to see him at all. Wow. So that one is shocking, considering he never really got to implement anything he was going to try to do anyway. So I guess, the buzz that I have read as I've kind of delved into the story, because I did not see this one coming. I certainly did not have this one on my Belgian GP Preview bingo card as to what I was going to talk about tonight. It seems like Audi is pretty desperate to try to get kick this thing into high gear, no pun intended, with their current sponsor, because the results have been so bad this year. They have no points. They have not really been close to scoring points in the last few rounds. And the big thing that I've read is they haven't landed Carlos Sainz, despite the Seidel-Sainz relationship from his McLaren days. That hasn't been able to come to fruition. So they take the other guy who hired Carlos Sainz, Mattia Binotto, with the glasses and the curly hair and all of that. So, wow, that was, again, not what I was expecting. So, Cody, thoughts on this move for Audi?
I think it's pretty crazy. I mean, Audi went with Andreas Seidel because of his success over at McLaren, who is now really, really reaping that success. And they wanted to use him to get their, F1 project really off the ground and well organized. And I guess we all assumed he was doing a pretty good job with that in the background. But I guess Audi is not satisfied with what they're seeing out of Sauber right now. And I'm really not surprised. Sauber is, consistently at the back. They haven't scored any points. They're in last place. So it must be a little frightening for them that they're about to be plastering their name all over this car, and it's at the back of the grid. But, I think we need to remember that it takes a very long time to flip a Formula One team and get it back to winning ways. I mean, Sauber has been consistently at the back for a long time now. And, I guess a good example right now would be Williams, it's been many, many years since Williams was at its glory days. And, they've gone from being back of the pack to, I would say a midfield contender at this point on a good day. But they're still not, like a front running team. And they've got big investment right now. And they've been making, all of their own changes, getting, oh man, his name is floating around in there somewhere right now. But the guy from
James Vowles.
Yeah, James Vowles. So, I kind of felt like this, having Andreas Seidel was a similar move from Audi to get, to get new personnel in Sauber and get them built up and, at least to, midfield contention for when they join in. But yeah, I guess I don't really think it's a great idea that they're kicking Andreas Seidel and Oliver Hoffman out. But that said, who they're going with, Mattia Binotto, is, a proven, I don't know if talent is the right word because he's not a driver or anything, but Mattia Binotto has been quite successful as a team principal in the past. He was very successful at Ferrari, ended up leaving the team because, differences between, his camp and, I think there was a lot of tension between him and Leclerc, right? That, ended up leading to him getting kicked out because the team wasn't really producing.
Yeah, he was kind of the historic Ferrari, old school, John Elkann, Charles Leclerc, the shiny new school thinking at Ferrari, and the two just really didn't mesh. And, and now enter Fred Vasseur, and now we're kind of seeing there's been some good. They've definitely fixed a lot of their strategy call problems. I haven't mentioned Ferrari Decision Desk in a while, so that's a good thing there. But
you can't deny though that Binotto definitely knows his stuff, and so I think he's definitely a decent replacement to get in here over at Audi.
You're going to get a guy who's going to come in and do probably a flip over of that team. Now, what you've just done is reset your clock, and whatever progress Seidel had made behind the scenes is, but Binotto's going to have to come in, probably take the rest of this season to do the evaluation, and then you're probably going to see some turnover. I know James Key, who was at McLaren, who's had, some success, had a really good year in 2021 and then a really not so good year in 2022 as a car designer. He was working with the Kick Sauber team to try to get them back up to snuff, and apparently, that may be the next head to go. I would imagine if Binotto wants to come in and move some of his ex-Ferrari personnel back into those types of places. So it's definitely going to see a lot of change probably in the personnel and who's going to do what for a team that, quite frankly, could use it. So I understand the move. Like if you're an you're an Audi board member and you're not seeing any bang for your buck and you're putting up all this money, you might want to start to see some signs of progress. And yeah, so I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see what they do. Who can they get? How quickly can Bonato come in and kind of put his stamp on it? And of course, you've got this big rule change beckoning over the course of next year. So he's got 18 months basically to get that place as ready as it can be. And if you're going to make a move, you might as well do it now, because if they'd waited even to the end of this season to try to do something like this, I don't think he would have had enough time.
Yeah, Bernardo is going to definitely have his own way of doing things. It's going to be, different from how Andreas Seidel and Oliver Hoffman were doing things, and it's going to take time to, get the whole team on board with his methods. And yeah, I guess I would agree with you that it's probably as good a time as any to do that now, because if they're not seeing the results now that they're expecting, I think they probably want to try to get to a better spot, like you're saying, before that rule change, before they've got the name plastered all over the car and they've got their engine in there. So, yeah, I think this is probably, if they're going to be making big changes like this is, probably the time to be doing it.
Yeah. So yet another stop on the merry-go-round that is this 2024 season. Again, did not see this one coming, and of course, this sport gives it to you when you least expect it. I will say that till I'm done talking about this sport, because it always seems to ring true. But as speaking of things coming thick and fast, if you thought Max Verstappen's last Grand Prix outing was full of drama, this next one has not gotten off to a particularly great start, as apparently he is set to take a 10-place grid drop due to taking a fifth power unit. Did lose that engine in FP1 in Canada, and that kind of futzed with the entire schedule. And it looks like Red Bull are deciding to try to take the penalty and the pain now at a track that does tend to lend itself well for overtaking and being able to finish not necessarily where you start. The other thing that Red Bull is doing is they're taking their latest big upgrade package that they brought to Hungary and they're putting it off to the side, at least for now. They're going to revert back to their older spec for Spa, because they tend to think that the Spa conditions, the weather, the layout would more suit that package versus this one. Maybe is this really the beginnings of some chinks in the armor here at Red Bull? Cody, you're there who I look to when I'm looking for Red Bull side of things. What's your thought on all this? Wow.
I think it's going to be very interesting, because we're not in 2022 anymore, where Max, has the car to drive from the lower half of the grid to a 20-second victory. This time, if he's starting as far back as 10th or further back, he's going to have to really work for it, and there's going to be a lot of tough competition that he's going to have to fight through. So I think a 10-place grid penalty will, unless he is having an amazing race, I think really takes him out of contention for the victory. I guess we'll just have to see what happens. I might be eating my words later, but I think it's also very interesting that they're taking the upgrade package off. Although what I had heard was that the new upgrade package that they brought for Hungary, they were expecting was going to help with the lower speed circuits. And so, my understanding of Spa is it's a pretty high speed circuit, lots of pretty long straights. And so maybe they're feeling, like you said, that, because of the track itself, as well as, the conditions that they might be seeing at this race, they're expecting, we're going to get into it, they're expecting some wet weather for this, and they've already got a decent understanding of how the older package works under those types of conditions. So it might just feel like they're on the safe side for it. I have to imagine that Max really, really wouldn't want to take an engine penalty for the Netherlands.
Yeah, that's true.
He probably wants to win that race, probably just about as much as anything else. I think he probably enjoys that one, and his fans enjoy that probably even more than something like Monaco. So, I would think he personally would want to take the engine penalty here over there, and passing it at the Netherlands probably isn't as easy as it would be here. From years past, we've seen that the Red Bull is pretty good in a straight line. I mean, last year, we were joking about that the car was a rocket ship, and in DRS zones, it made passing other cars look like nothing. So maybe we'll see a little bit more of that here. And if that's what Red Bull's expecting, then yeah, this would be the place to take a grid penalty.
Yeah, so a storyline that we will be watching, obviously, throughout the course of the weekend, where he qualifies, where he will ultimately line up, who is in front of him, and who he has to try to overtake and when. And we'll have to see kind of how they nail the strategy. So, he was not a big fan of the strategy last time out. Hopefully, Red Bull will shore that up a little bit, at least for him, because he's got some work to do on Sunday for sure. All right, so also kind of dropping this week, the FIA had one of their little commission meetings, and that's usually where they like rubber stamp rule changes and stuff like that. This one was actually fairly subdued. There's not a whole lot that actually did get passed. I think the one thing that did get passed was I think they increased the driver weight limit for next year. So I think they added like 5 kilos allotment to the drivers so they don't have to be on, crazy diets and stuff like that. So would count that as a win. You can take the weight off of something else and let the driver have it. That's totally fine with me. But one of the proposals that had been floated around, and I didn't even realize it had gotten all the way here, apparently that the proposed point system of changing the points where you would potentially award all the way down to P12, that has been unanimously rejected. So that is not going to happen. That was potentially slated to come in 2025. That will no longer happen. The main thought behind it, as I've read, was that it was proposed by a lot of midfield teams when you had this absolute chasm between the top 5 and the bottom 5. And since then, it looks like the bottom 5 has caught up a little bit. So, we're seeing basically all but one team have been able to score points, and they've almost all got to double digits, except for, I think, Williams, who are, I think, on 9 points right now. So, I guess it makes sense. I would have not been that upset had they gone down to P12 with the points. I thought, that might be an interesting change, give more potential for teams to take more risk as opposed to, if you're not in the top 10, you pretty much see a lot of ho-hum, not a whole lot doing. I guess I'm okay with this one too. Cody, what's your thought on this?
Yeah, I guess I like the tradition of only the top half of the field gets points. I don't know. It feels right. I guess it's been a while too since you had less than that scoring points. We've been in the the top 10 scoring points for most of the time that I've been around for, and so I think it would be a little weird to award the points further out than that unless you were going to be adding more drivers to the grid. If you say had another team or two on the grid where you're up to 22, 24 drivers, then you could extend the points out to 12 and you'd still be awarding points to the top half of the grid. So in that situation, it would make more sense to me. But yeah, I think it would benefit midfield teams, but I obviously they didn't think it would benefit them enough because they unanimously agreed that they didn't want to make this change, at least at this point in time. I'm sure, this might come back around. Who knows? Maybe we'll see a revision to the point system at some point that doesn't change who is awarded points, but how they're allocated. We've gone through several iterations of points where the top 10 received them, but or a couple now where the top 10 received them, but they've been allocated differently. In the later 2000s, it was more evenly spread out. Now it's kind of back to the winning driver gets a little bit more of a bonus. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to see where this goes. But for now, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big impetus and the screaming, the voices who were pining for it have kind of all backed off because, I mean, you were looking at teams like VCarb and teams like Williams who looked early on like, if they score 5 points, that might be a great season for them, especially in the first couple of rounds, the way that it looked like it was shaping up. So, now with 9 out of 10 teams of scoring and 8 out of the 10 teams being in double digits and having tight battles basically up and down, I mean, all the way through even to P9 of the constructors, it seems like everybody's getting enough of theirs to where I think everyone is happy. So I'm not surprised that this, first off, I guess I'm surprised that it made it this far. I didn't even realize that it had gone all the way to an FIA ruling that had they somehow agreed to this, then that would have been codified. But I thought it was just this odd proposal. I didn't know that it had even gotten that far. So that was the surprising part, but it's not going to happen. So anyway, we'll move on from that. And we'll focus a little bit on the weekend proper. One car that will look much different than it normally does. Hopefully they're not at the back like they were last weekend, because I think this livery looks pretty darn cool, if you ask me. Alpine will debut a Deadpool and Wolverine livery, which will coincide with the launch of that movie, which also coincides with one of the owners of now the Alpine team. So be on the lookout for that. It's bright red. I don't think you can miss it. It's not Ferrari red, so you won't get that confused. But I thought the livery looked pretty good. Cody, what's your thought on the specialized livery for the Alpine team?
I'm a big fan of special liveries as a whole. I guess I'm a little bit more of a fan of the liveries where it's focused on the team's history or where they're racing a little bit more than like a special type of sponsorship deal. But that said, Ryan Reynolds is now a part owner of Alpine, yep. So I guess it kind of makes sense that they would provide his new movie as a sponsor on the car. And I think it's kind of fun too. Like, it's a little out there. It's a little different. Deadpool is kind of a goofy movie and a goofy premise. And, I think it kind of shows that they're willing to, branch out and have a little bit of fun. They don't have to take everything so seriously all the time, which is great. So the more special liveries, the better, in my opinion.
And hopefully Alpine can somehow wheedle their way into the points. So hopefully it's a good thing for them. They could definitely use it after last weekend, that's for sure. All right, so we're going to actually take a quick break here. We're going to come back. We're going to get into our Belgian GP track facts. We're going to talk about the weather. The weather is always a story, it seems, the last few years in Belgium. This weekend looks to be no exception there. I think we will be seeing some dodging of raindrops. We have to talk about the track itself. It looks like, we have a new surface, so that's always interesting. And we have some DRS zone changes. And then we are actually going to get back into the predictions game. We will tell you what we think is going to happen this weekend, and then we'll see how wrong we all are, or how right we all are, especially in Cody's case, because he tends to nail these podiums. But we do have some allotment here, some alignment on some stuff, so it's going to be interesting. We'll get into all that in just a little bit. Come on back. You won't want to miss it. You are listening to the Outlap F1 podcast, and we'll be right back after this quick pit stop. Grab your flu powder, broomstick, or apparate to your favorite audio streaming service to join the discussion on Hogwarts, a podcast, where Dan and his friends have in-depth chapter-by-chapter breakdowns of each Harry Potter novel. Join the group as they dive into the magical world and discuss plot points, analyze character development, and occasionally go off the rails. Whether you're a muggle who's new to the series or a pure-blood wizard who won't need a remember-all, Hogwarts, a podcast, brings everyone to the Great Hall for a magical discussion. Hogwarts, a podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back in. This is Season 6, Episode 29 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2024 Belgian GP Preview show. And you've got Andy, and I'm along with Cody tonight. And we're going to hop into our GP weekend proper, and we will start, as we always do, with our track facts. Cody, it's your time to shine on this one. Tell us about the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps.
All right, this weekend, Formula One goes racing around the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, located in Stavelot, Belgium. 44 laps around the circuit for the Formula One Grand Prix, and the length of the track is 7.004 kilometers, which is 4.35 miles, and consists of 19 turns. Tire selection from Pirelli for this race is a C2 for the hard, C3 for the medium, and C4 for the soft compound. And the track characteristics from Pirelli are a 4 out of 5 for traction, 4 out of 5 for asphalt grip, 4 out of 5 for asphalt abrasion, 3 out of 5 for track evolution, 5 out of 5 for tire stress, 4 out of 5 for braking, 5 out of 5 for lateral load, and a 2 out of 5 for downforce. The qualifying lap record under the current configuration goes to Lewis Hamilton, which is set in 2020, and that was a 1 minute 41.252 seconds. while the race lap record was set by his teammate Valtteri Bottas in 2018 in the Mercedes, and that was a 1 minute 46.286 seconds. Most wins around the circuit, I feel like it comes up a lot for most wins, is Michael Schumacher with 6 wins here, followed by Ayrton Senna with 5. It is a 3-way tie for third place between Jim Clark, Kimi Raikkonen, and Lewis Hamilton with 4 wins apiece. And then fourth place is a 4-way tie, that is between Juan Manuel Fangio, Damon Hill, Sebastian Vettel, and Max Verstappen with 3 wins each. A lot of big names up here for the most wins list. And the most constructor wins here goes to Ferrari with a whopping 18, followed by McLaren with 14, Lotus with 8 in third, Mercedes in fourth with 7, and a tie between Alfa Romeo, I guess the old school Alfa Romeo, and Williams here with 4 wins each. What's the circuit like, Andy?
All right, Spa is among Formula One drivers' most loved tracks with its mix of long straights and challenging fast corners, allowing them to push their cars to the edge of their capabilities when it's dry. The size of the track and the nature of the Belgian weather means it can sometimes be raining in one part of the track and dry on another, meaning the grip can vary from one corner to the next. Keep always an eye on the thrilling Eau Rouge, probably the most famous sequence of corners in the world, as the drivers flick left, right, and up the hill through Radion. As for the weather, and the Belgian weather will play a factor this weekend, no doubt about it, qualifying looks to be wet. There is a 90% chance of rain for Saturday, high only of around 65 degrees. Winds will be light and variable, so, it rains heavy, and then it sticks around there. Rainfall near 1/4 of an inch, locally heavy rainfall possible. So be ready for possible delay to the qualifying if we get there, or red flags at least for sure. As for the race, it does look like that is setting up to be dry at this point. Partly cloudy is the forecast, a high of 73, so a bit warmer. Winds light and variable, only a 21% chance of rain there. And as I mentioned, as we were teasing it before we went into the break, the Sector 1 DRS zone has been reduced by 75 meters for 2024 to hopefully not make that as easy of an overtake as it definitely was last year. If you were within a half second of somebody going into the first turn, there was a good chance you were getting past that car by the end of that long straight approaching turn 5. And the other thing to note, we have a new track surface. So new track surfaces and wet conditions can sometimes mean some interesting results. So it's definitely going to be on the teams to get the grip levels right, being on the right tire at the right time, especially if we have more changeable conditions. This is kind of what we've seen with a lot of places. So cool, wet on Saturday. Qualifying will be a premium for sure. And then the race, it is a race that you can overtake, so you're not done if you don't get the qualifying necessarily right. So be interesting to see how the teams approach setup, one condition expected for qualifying and a different condition expected for the race. All right, so we are going to now get into our predictions game here, and we shall start, as we are apt to do, with the qualifying pole sitter. This will be the person who wins the qualifying, sets the best lap time. Last year's qualifying pole sitter was Max Verstappen in almost dominant fashion. But Cody, what you got here?
I do think this one is going to go to Max Verstappen again. If he is going to be taking that 10-place grid penalty, he's going to be going out there to maximize what he can do in the race. I also feel like he's got something to prove after what happened last race, where he was getting pretty bent out of shape. Things weren't really going his way. Hopefully he's going to come back here and try to be a little more collected and take that pole.
All right, very good. I'm going for the other protagonist in the championship here. I'm going to go with Lando Norris because I do think he's going to have something to prove as well. And usually when he gets upset, that usually when sometimes the best of him will come out. So I'm looking forward to that. What is the response to all of the melodrama and melee from last weekend? So that's what I think is going to happen. It's happened, so now I can predict it. There we go.
Do you think 4 years ago you would have been calling, you would have thought by now you'd be calling Lando Norris a championship protagonist?
I would have hoped that we would have gotten here, but I don't know that my rational brain would have been able to say that. But it is a testament to how far this team has come. That they're definitely going to start next year as the 1 and 1A up against Red Bull. Unless they completely botch, unless something happens that they just botch the development of the car, which can happen, but I don't see that happening. So, with the rules being stable, so let's see where this goes. But I think it's going to be a fascinating qualifying session. I would expect Mercedes to be better here because of those conditions. Cool, wet, changeable. That seems to favor them, i.e. Canada. So, we may see an odd George Russell, but I do think Lando will come out on top of, at least in the qualifying anyway. But all right, so we will now, what is that lap time and what does that look like given the conditions? Last year's pole time was set in tricky mixed conditions with a 146.168. Cody, what you got here?
With how much rain they're expecting to get on Saturday, I'm going to go a little slower than last year. Actually, I guess quite a bit slower, over a second slower. I'm going to go with a 1 minute 47.343 seconds.
All right, very good. I'm also banking on rain as well. And I'm just saying, I'm just going to go slower. I just needed to go slower than you. But I do think if it's definitely enters for qualifying, I don't see them getting even maybe into they may be in the 150s is where this really is. But I'm going to go 148.569 to try to cover off. In case it dries out, we get a window of dry weather, which can also happen. It's 90% chance of rain to rain some point on Saturday. Saturday's a long day. So there may be periods of dryness in there as well. All right, so we will move into the Sunday race, and we will start with the podium. Last year's podium, Max Verstappen P1, Sergio Perez P2. Boy, it's been a long time since we've uttered that phrase. Charles Leclerc was P3 on the day. All right, Cody, what you got for a race podium?
I think this is going to be another really good one for McLaren, especially with the prospect of Max starting, halfway down the field or further back than that. So I'm going to go with a flip-flop from the last race. We got Lando Norris taking home the win, Oscar Piastri in second, and then Max Verstappen fighting his way up pretty well up to third place on the podium.
All right, very good there. I'm going to go Homer here because why not? Lando Norris to take the win. I'm going to have Lewis Hamilton in P2 because changeable conditions, variable conditions, staying on top of the tires. When it changes from wet to dry, it seems to be where Lewis has kind of made his mark over the years. So I think that they may set their car up slightly different in qualifying and may be able to come through a little bit better in the race. That's where I think Mercedes, if you're a Mercedes fan, that's where they can be dangerous. So interesting there. And I've got Oscar Piastri making it a double McLaren podium, coming home in P3. I just don't think Max is going to be able to get there. There's so many guys he's going to have to try to come through. Not a lot of them are going to be easy peasy, especially having to come through both Mercedes to even get to those podium positions. But you can't overtake. Verstappen podium is certainly plausible, but I don't want to predict it. All right. So we will move into our fastest lap of the driver. The 2023 fastest lap was set by the aforementioned Lewis Hamilton with a 147.305. Cody, what you got for a fastest lap, and who do you got doing it?
I got fastest lap driver going to probably be, we're going to give that one to Lewis Hamilton. Like you said, I think he's going to manage the tires very well in the changeable conditions and probably put in a pretty good one at the end of the race. And I got him doing it with a 1 minute 46.934 seconds.
So I'm going to make a last minute change so my narrative makes sense. If I'm saying Max is not going to be on the podium, he's probably going to be in a position to go for that fastest lap, and I think he will take it. So I'm going to give that to Max Verstappen for the fastest lap point. I've got a 146.258 seconds there. All right, for our bonus picks, I have selected the even-numbered positions in the points, not on the podium. So P4, P6, and P8 are my selections. I'll go first here. For P4, I'm going to give this one to George Russell. For P6, I'm going to give it to Carlos Sainz. And P8, I see Fernando Alonso slotting in here. Cody, what's your thought on the bonus picks?
All right. I've got Lewis Hamilton just missing out on the podium in P4. I think this is going to be a little bit of a rockier weekend for Ferrari. I don't know, can feel it in my gut for some reason. So I got Charles Leclerc coming in P6 and Carlos Sainz back in P8.
Ooh, that would be a rough weekend for them indeed. All right, and our prop bet. Cody has selected this one. Will Sergio Perez, who will have the microscope on him, and the decision apparently is going to be made right after this race on whether or not he will continue in the car. So maximum pressure applied to him. Will he be in the points? Not even in Q3, just in the points. So interesting. Cody, this is your pick. What you got?
I'm gonna say no.
Woo-hoo.
With how he's done in qualifying in the last couple of races, which is not great. In fact, he's crashed out quite a bit. With how wet it's supposed to be, I got a pretty good feeling he's going to crash out in qualifying again. That's going to put him in a pretty poor position during the race. And with Max Verstappen also, qualifying potentially further back, there's going to be a lot of focus put on helping him advance through the field as much as possible. So I think at that point, Sergio Perez is going to be relegated to being a tire guinea pig, and I think it's going to cause him to finish outside the points.
All right, very good. And then outside of his drive, apparently, the way you've got it, which very well may happen. I got a funny feeling this may be one of those Monday morning, we think we're on summer break, and then breaking news happens. But we will watch out for that if that does happen. But I'm going to say yes, I do think he'll finish in the points. It'll be very interesting to see if he can keep it on track in the qualifying sessions. If he can, that will obviously make his life a lot easier. If he doesn't, or he somehow finds himself out in Q1 because they got caught out again or something weird happens, the vultures will be circling, and they will be circling that much more if that happens. But all of that having been said, because it's going to probably be dry on Sunday, I do think the car in and of itself should make it back at least into the points. Even if he starts in, let's say, P17 again, I think he can come through and at least finish P10. At least, God, I hope so for his sake. But I'm going to go yes on this one. And this will ensure we will have some differentiation amongst our picks, and we will have probably a clear winner, although we'll probably find some way to tie yet again. All right. So when and where can you watch your F1 this weekend? It's the last weekend for a while. So you start your F1 weekend with FP1. That will come at you 7:25 a.m. Eastern, bright and early. That's on ESPN2. FP2 kicks off 10:55 a.m. Eastern. That's on ESPNU. FP3 kicks off Saturday, 6:25 a.m. Eastern. So set those alarms early and wake up and get a pot of coffee in you. That's on ESPN2. And enjoy that pot of coffee, and then have a nice breakfast, and then come back for qualifying on Saturday morning, 9:55 a.m. Eastern. That's on ESPN2. And it's for the race on Sunday, the same time as last week, 8:55 a.m. Eastern. That, however, will be on the ESPN main channel throughout the course of the weekend. F1 TV is also your options as well, if you are so inclined. All of the sessions live streaming and with onboards, which is how I would recommend you watch all of them, because you get so much more out of it. But anyway, I love this track. I love this weekend. Looks like it's going to be pretty epic with some rain and all that stuff. So I'm excited for it. Cody, any final thoughts?
I am definitely excited for it. The cool thing about Spa is that the cars just look so cool going through it, especially through that Eau Rouge Radion section, that it doesn't matter if it doesn't end up being the most exciting race ever. It's still really fun to watch. Then there have certainly been some bangers here, so I hope we get another one.
Yeah, I am with you too. I'm just rooting for, at least from a McLaren side, drama free. For the love of God, just drama free. That's what I'm hoping for there. But we'll be back either on Sunday or Monday, depending on our schedules, to recap it all, set up the summer break. Let's see if we have the same thing happen where I am posting the episode and breaking news happens, which is probably what's more apt to happen to us. But anyway, we will be back on Sunday to recap all of the good, the bad, the ugly from a Spa-Francorchamps weekend. So for Cody, it's been Andy. We'll see you over the course of the weekend. Stay tuned to our social media. If anything does break, we'll try to bring it to you. And as always, may all your laps be fast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Outlap F1 podcast. If you like what you heard, click that subscribe button and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you want to connect with us outside of the show, check out our website at www.outlapf1.com. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at OutlapF1 Podcast, or email us at chatnow@outlapf1.com. As always, thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you on the next one.